Chapter 8. Nancy Accused. Nancy had to make up her mind in a hurry whether to try to get away from the man or turn the tables on him and prove that he had helped a criminal escape. In the distance, she saw her father running in her direction. He had called another guard, who was hurrying along with him. By the time Nancy's adversary realized that he was about to be caught, he let go of her and started to run. But the girl grabbed his wrist and held on tightly. Tug as he would, he could not get away before Mr. Drew and the other guard had caught up. "What's going on here?" the lawyer demanded. Before the suspect could answer, the guard who had accompanied Mr. Drew spoke up. "This man is not one of us." He turned to the imposter. "Who are you?" The man did not reply, so Nancy told her story and her suspicion that he was in league with a man who was wanted by numerous United States authorities. "I will take him into custody and hold him until he talks," the legitimate guard declared. He asked the imposter where he had obtained the uniform. The suspect stared defiantly, but said nothing. Nancy tried to catch him by surprise. "Where did Benny Caputi go?" she asked him. The prisoner jumped and blinked, indicating that the girl had touched upon a vital subject. Still, he did not talk. "It is against the law to impersonate an officer," the guard declared. "You will have to come with me." Suddenly, the suspect cried out, "Why don't you arrest this girl? She molested a visitor, trying to photograph him against his will. See her camera? She was bothering people with it." Nancy and her father were startled, but Nancy said calmly, "He's trying to twist things around. The fellow who fled, and who I believe is in league with this man, took my photograph. That's why I chased him." The guard nodded and handcuffed the prisoner. "I understand. Just give me your names and addresses in case the police want to contact you." The Drews did, but before leaving Nara, they went to headquarters and told the full story. They suggested that the chief get in touch with the United States authorities regarding Caputi and the suspect, who evidently acted as a bodyguard for Benny the Slippery One. The officer thanked them for the information and promised to look into the matter. When the Drews and the Mises reached home late next afternoon, they found Haruka, the delightful maid whom the family employed, had arranged a special dinner. The reason was that it was Mrs. Mise's birthday. Haruka had made paper bird and flower decorations using the famous origami method. She had hung them in various parts of the dining room. On the table, she had put live flowers of various colors interspersed with green vines. In one corner of the room, the maid had placed a huge jardiniere and filled it with lavender wisteria that gently drooped over the sides. Haruka served a delicious dinner that included strips of fish with rice and fried vegetables. Warm sake, a wine made from rice, was served with the meal. Dessert consisted of a flat piece of plain cake in which the center was scooped up and had been replaced with half a large ripe peach. Over it she had poured a hot pink peach sauce, and she had decorated around the edge with scattered peach leaves. Everyone enjoyed the delicious meal, and they each proposed toasts to wish Mrs. Mise a happy birthday. When dinner was over, Haruka brought in a large cake with hundreds of gorgeous butterflies in it. She announced that this was her personal gift to Mrs. Mise. She had recently been on vacation and had collected them herself. "They are beautiful," Mrs. Mise told her, then translated for the Drews. "You know my love for the colors blue and yellow," she continued. "How exquisite these butterflies are." Everyone stood up to look at the fluttering creatures. Nancy liked a particular one that had various shades of blue from light to dark, from its center to the wingtips. Mr. Drew's favorite was a reddish-brown butterfly with black spots on its wings. After the excitement about the gift had subsided, Mr. Misay gave his wife his presento. It was a high comb studded with pearls for his wife's hair. "How beautiful!" Nancy exclaimed. "My husband is a most kind man," Mrs. Misay said. "This is a lovely way to remind me of this birthday." Nancy and her father were sorry they had not known about the special occasion and did not have a gift for their hostess. Suddenly, Nancy laughed. "Dad," she said, "we brought presentos for the Misays from the United States. In all the excitement about villains, we completely forgot." She asked to be excused, went upstairs, and got the gifts from her suitcase. She brought them down and handed a package to each of their friends. Mr. Misay's presento was a new type of fountain pen. After thanking the Drews, he said that he was delighted to own one of them, since they had not yet reached the Japanese market. His wife's gift was a dainty lace handkerchief. It had been made by a nun who was an expert at needlecraft. She had learned the art in Belgium. Mrs. Misay was thrilled with the presento. Further conversation was interrupted by the ringing of the telephone. Haruka answered and said that it was for Mr. Drew and Miss Nancy. When Mr. Drew said hello, there was a click on the line, and it went dead. Nancy and her father looked at each other. Was this a hoax, or was Mr. Caputi trying to find out whether the Drews had returned to the Misays' home? The lawyer asked Haruka if she had any idea from where the call had come. "It was from overseas, sir," she said. "I am so sorry you were interrupted." A few minutes went by and the phone rang again. This time Mr. Drew answered it himself. "Is this the Misay home?" a man asked. "Yes." "Am I speaking with Mr. Drew?" "Yes." "This is Professor Joji Misay in River Heights." The caller identified himself. "I'm glad to hear from you," Mr. Drew said. "Did you just call a few minutes ago and were interrupted?" "Yes, I had to try again. Unfortunately, I have bad news for you." Nancy, who stood close enough to the receiver to overhear the conversation, felt a chill going down her spine. Instantly, she thought of Mr. Moto and Mr. Kikichi. "I have just learned," the professor went on, "that burglars broke into Mr. Moto's shop. Chief McGinnis asked me to tell you about it. They took everything in the place." "That is indeed bad news," Mr. Drew remarked. "What about Mr. Kikichi?" "He was beaten unconscious and taken to the hospital, but he is all right now." "Are there any clues to the burglars?" Mr. Drew inquired. "Yes, the police think that Benny Caputi and his wife were responsible. Further investigation revealed that they might have fled to Japan. We thought you should know this." Mr. Drew told the professor of their trip to Nara. "My daughter believes she spotted Mr. Caputi, but was stopped from pursuing him by a fake guard." He gave the details of the event, and the professor suggested that the Drews try to locate the couple. "We'll do our best," Mr. Drew promised. "I suppose the River Heights police are working on this, but we may find some good leads here." "Fine. I will report this to the chief. And now I would like to say hello to my brother and his wife." As Mr. Drew said goodbye to the professor and handed the phone to Mr. Misay, Nancy felt frustrated. Not only had they failed to find Mr. Moto, but now all his property had been stolen. While she and her father discussed the case, she did not know that a good lead would turn up soon. The Misays joined them a few minutes later, but their conversation was interrupted again when the phone rang a third time. The call was for Nancy. It proved to be from the chief of the Tokyo police force. "We are holding a woman here who has been using a phony passport," the officer told her. "She resembles the description you gave us of a suspect the other day. Is it possible for you to come here to identify her?" End of Chapter 8.